What's going on, everyone? Bringing you another matchup between me and Fatty the King, which is one of the best fights I think I've personally had in a long time. So we issue the challenge here. I get things started outright with my Annabelle, which is a really good showcase for her. He gets things started with Giratina, which is perfect for me because most Giratinas are stall, bulky types. He activates pressure, which isn't good for my Annabelle because it's going to take a lot of my PP. He goes for a Will-O-Wisp on Annabelle, which does not burn her, but most people don't know that. So fortunately for me, he didn't realize that. So I badly poison him, and I think I'm pretty much getting the upper hand here with my Toxic. I go for a Protect to Toxic stall him out just a little bit more. He uses Roar to get me out of there because he realizes that he can't Will-O-Wisp Annabelle. We go into my Lady Punch. At this point, I realize that he's trying to get a nice Will-O-Wisp game on me. I stall him out with some Toxic. I evolve into Lopunny to get a Fake Out in. So I get a Fake Out, which is perfect with the Toxic stall. But Giratina is just way too bulky for it to do any kind of good damage at all. Now, if I were to do any move here, it wouldn't do anything. So I go back into Annabelle, predicting that he's going to try to Will-O-Wisp me. But unfortunately, I was wrong. He went for a Rest. Even if I would have did something with Lopunny, I just wasn't confident. I was pretty sure he was going to try to do a Will-O-Wisp. So with the Rest, he gets rid of his Toxic and restores his health. So now I'm kind of worried at this point. But I ended up protecting myself, because I thought he was going to do something. So he does Sleep Talk, and I was right. I did predict that he had Sleep Talk, and it does Will-O-Wisp, so I'm not really affected by that. Again, so Annabelle's going to be kind of the highlight of this matchup for me, because now I realize his Giratina is really bulky. So with an Annabelle, I get another Wish in. He withdraws his Giratina. He goes into Chansey here. Now most Chanseys run like Seismic Toss, Soft Boil, that kind of setup. So I go for a Heat Wave just to get some damage on Giratina, but I didn't know he was going to switch out. Does absolutely no damage to Chansey whatsoever. I use a Toxic on Chansey. So I get him poisoned, which is awesome. But most Chanseys have Heal Bells as well. He gets a Toxic on me, so at this point, Annabelle's a highlight of some of my gameplay. So for me, I wasn't really appreciating that I got Toxic. So now I gotta play really smart or else I was gonna lose my Annabelle. He gets hurt by the Toxic. So I decided to switch my Annabelle out because I don't want her to suffer from the Toxic damage. And there's really nothing he can do to my Double Aid in terms of being Toxic. Well, he can do Seismic Toss, but since I'm a Ghost, it wouldn't affect me. So just to get some smart strategy going, I send my Double Aid out to get a Swords Dance. However, he Heal Bells to get rid of the poison, which is smart. So now I realize that I'm going up against someone who really knows what they're doing. So I get a Swords Dance in to double my attack. So he withdraws the Chansey. So he kind of reads a little bit into what I'm doing here. He exerts pressure. I get another Swords Dance in, so at this point, I'm thinking I have a really bulky Muramasa. So I go for a Shadow Sneak just to get rid of Deoxys in case he try to Fire Punch me or anything. Luckily for me, that one-shots without a Focus Sash, because most people who run Attack Form Deoxys have a Focus Sash, so I maxed out on the on a good scale there. He sends out Giratina, and I'm worried about the burn. I don't want to get burned here, so I go for a Shadow Sneak. Even though I predicted I was going to get a burn. I thought it would do a lot more damage, but Giratina is just way too bulky. So I knew the Will-O-Wisp was coming. Unfortunately for me, it didn't miss. So now my Muramasa is burned. I go for Shadow Sneak again, trying to get some healthy damage out of it. But unfortunately, with the burn, it just doesn't do the damage that I'm looking for. He gets my Muramasa out of here, trying to burn stall some of my other Pokemon. He gets out my Tofbe Fong with his Roar, and same thing, he's going to try to Will-O-Wisp again. But I tried to get the Earthquake kill, because I knew he was either going to go for Rest, but it doesn't one-shot it. But I predicted right, he went for a Rest instead of a Will-O-Wisp. So now I realize this Giratina is just really good. It's damn near unstoppable with the kind of setup that I'm running, because it's really bulky and there's not much I can do, and it has Will-O-Wisp, so it can just keep whittling down my my physical attackers. So I go back into my Muramasa even though it's burned. At this point I'm going to try to get some good Swords Dances in, maybe I can do some kind of decent damage. He uses Sleep Talk, which roars me out, which I completely forgot about the Sleep Talk. Brings out my Underpunch, which I don't have any options except for Ice Punch on Underpunch. So I get him out of there because I don't want to get Sleep Talk Will-O-Wisp. So I go back into Muramasa, who's already burned, just in case he decides to go for Will-O-Wisp again. I don't want any one of my physical attackers to have to deal with that. So he goes for Sleep Talk once more, and same thing, I get roared. But I don't want to risk any one of my other teammates getting burned. So I just kind of got to deal with his mind games that he's playing here. So I get Underpunch out, because again, I'm not trying to get Sleep Talk roared, but he should wake up on this turn. Sleep is normally 3 turns or so. So he goes for a Sleep Talk, or no, he goes for a Withdrawal, because he realizes that it's just going to go in the same loop. He gets out Emboar, which is bad, because I'm burned, so I can't really do any good damage. And his Emboar, or just Emboar in general, has some really good attacks, especially for starting Pokemon. I believe he's one of the best physical attacking Pokemon there is in terms of starters. He goes for Heat Crash, which I could not survive. And it's a critical hit, so even if it wasn't a critical, the blade pretty much became useless for that matchup because he was burned. So I decided to send out my Toffee Fong, who I have Choice Scarf. So with my Choice Scarf, I'm basically gonna, try to get a nice Earthquake to outspeed him, but he smartly withdraws him back into Giratina, even though Giratina's asleep. He exerts the pressure, which shouldn't really matter because I have a lot of PP. So my Earthquake kicks in that I was going to send out earlier. A critical hit, so it gets some good damage, but I don't want to get burned again. So I'm going to switch back into my Annabelle here, because I predict that it's going to wake up soon. Even though I'm poisoned, I can at least get some good something going up. But he used Sleep Talk again, thinking he'd still be asleep. Didn't read into his own sleep strategy. I'm hurt by poison just a little bit. He uses Rest again, just to go instantly back to sleep. Because now he realizes that I have some pretty damaging Pokemon on my team, so he goes for the Rest right nice and early, back to his sleep-up strategies. So basically it's a PP stalling match because he realizes that we both have enough things to keep each other at bay here. So he withdraws his Giratina once more. He goes into his Arceus, which is a Steel type. Now I switched out my Annabelle here, trying to read into his strategy, and I went for my Lilligant. Unfortunately for me, this isn't really a good match for my Lilligant because it's Hidden Power Rock, but he switched back out to Chansey, which is perfect for me because I get a chance to build up some Quiver Dances. But I switched back out of my Lilligant, trying to read into his strategy once again to get my Annabelle back in there, because I was going to try to get rid of that Steel Arceus. Because the longer I have my Annabelle out on the field, the more toxic damage she takes. So by switching her out and then switching her back in, I'm reading into his strategy a little bit more. So I switched out once more, try to get some Quiver Dances with Lilligant. He uses Protect because he figures that I'm going to try to go for a Toxic on his Chansey. So I go for a Quiver Dance. So at this point, he's probably going to try to switch out to another Pokemon who he can deal with after a Soft Boiled, which will get his HP right back up to max. Which is very smart on his part, keeping his Chansey, which is his Heal Beller, on his team. He withdraws the Chansey. I go for another Quiver Dance. So back to Giratina now. So even if he burns Lilligant, it's fine because she's not affected. And Giratina exerts pressure, which shouldn't matter to Lilligant because he has so much PP. So I raise my special attack, special defense, and speed once more. So now I can outspeed this thing, even if I wasn't able to before. Grass wouldn't work since it's Dragon, so I go for Hidden Power Rock just to get some decent damage. But it doesn't do a damn thing to this guy. Unfortunately for me, he gets the Sleep Talk Roar, which knocks me right out of my Quiver Dance Lilligant. But I used the Quiver Dance once more right before it. So pretty much at this point, I'm getting a Quiver Dance and another Hidden Power in right before he uses his Roar a final time to get my Lilligant out of here. So I do a decent amount of damage to it. Because I was trying to go for a Quiver Dance, but I got too greedy. I should have just went for another Hidden Power Rock, honestly. He sums up my Toffee Fong. which I'm just not feeling because I don't want to get my Toph burned. So I switch her back out into my Lilligant again, because if I get Will-O-Wisp with Lilligant, it's completely fine since he's a grass type, and that, you know, his Will-O-Wisp wouldn't affect my special attacker. So I get another Quiver Dance in, so my Hidden Power Rock will at least do some damage to this thing. He used Will-O-Wisp, it worked. So he gets to burn on my Lilligant, which is completely fine. So now I'm burned. He withdraws his Giratina back into Chansey, which is just fine for me because now I can get some. Now I can try to get some Quiver Dances in, but not before Hidden Power because I predicted that Aurora was going to come out of that. I get hurt by the burn, unfortunately. It uses Protect, but that's fine for me because now I'm going to try to get some Quiver Dances in my life. So Courtney quivers up with a Power Dance, or sorry, Quiver Dance. Powers up with a Quiver Dance. I get hurt by the burn, but it's okay because I kind of have Giga Drain, so I'm trying to kind of scope out that, you know, see a moment where I can use Giga Drain. Goes back into Giratina, unfortunately for me. So now he has this Roar strategy built up again. I use Quiver Dance once more. Now I have ×2 Quiver Dances. And as we saw before, my Hidden Power Rock with ×2 Quiver Dance, not that it didn't do much, but Giratina is just way too bulky. Rock doesn't affect it all that well. But I'm going for any kind of damage I can get. He uses Roar to get me out of there, and luckily for me, Giratina is actually at a low health right now. So I'm not at bad odds. So we can go for a Rest or Will-O-Wisp here. But see, I just wasn't having it. I wasn't trying to get my Toph burned at all. So I go back into Annabelle, predicting that he was going to try to do another Will-O-Wisp to burn my Toph. And I was right. The Will-O-Wisp ends up failing because it was used on Annabelle. So he withdrew his Giratina because he realized it was going to be a stall fest between Annabelle. Now he goes into Chansey here. So I used Wish so I can get some HP back with someone on my team. Or Annabelle specifically. Because the Toxic Stall is fine as long as you switch out. So I used Wish, I switched out so I can give someone else some HP. So I go into Lilligant so maybe I can get more Quiver Dances and restore her health since she was burned and I wasn't restoring anything. He withdraws Chansey once more. So this match is getting more and more intense because we're just really going back and forth here and we're kind of stalemating each other. So I had a Focus Sash on my Lilligant, but due to the burn, I'm not able to take the hit. So I switched out with Lilligant, trying to read into his strategy. Now I go into my Toph, which I have Choice Scarf, because it's flying and rock, so I'm really able to take whatever attacks this guy has to offer. He uses Acrobatics on me, which does some decent damage to my Toph, so he must have not had an item. I used my Iron Head to pretty much one-shot the Archeops, which means he probably didn't predict that I had a Choice Scarf on my Toph. So now we're seeing more results coming into this match here. Because now I took out one more of his Pokemon, so even if we were to stall, he's down one less member. So thinking I'm going to get Will-O-Wisp, I switched out my Toph. I go back into Annabelle, because obviously she's fire, so she can take the Will-O-Wisp. And again, I was right. It failed again. So me reading into it, even though I knew that it can possibly do a rest. And Annabelle's running out of HP here, so I try to go for another Wish. But he used Roar to get Annabelle out of there, which is unfortunate because I was going to try to protect and get some HP back with her since she desperately needs it. So I get sent back into Courtney. I get hurt by burn damage once more since it's the end of the turn. He withdraws Lilligant once more, so I try to go for a Quiver Dance, I believe. Which unfortunately for my Lilligant, again, I'm burned, so my Focus Sash is just pretty much not good. So I get a good Quiver Dance in, which means I now outspeed it. But it is a Fire/Fighting type, so my Hidden Power Rock is going to be neutral at best on it, which is just not going to give me the damage that I need. And I couldn't go for another Quiver Dance with my Focus Sash setup because I'm burned. So I pretty much decided to give my Lilligant up here because there's nothing I can do. So I go for a Hidden Power Rock to do at least some decent neutral damage to it. He uses Heat Crash, and that is going to be the end of my Lilligant because she can't take physical attacks, and even if she could, it'd be something to survive something like that. So we're now even again. I go into my Lady Punch, because now I'm going to try to go for some decent damage on him. He withdraws his Embor, trying to read into my Fake Out. I think that's what he was originally intending on trying to do. Unfortunately for him, I just went for a straight return, because most people try to predict the Fake Out. So I actually did good. So I do a return on Chansey, and it takes a lot of health, but it actually leaves him alive. So that really disappointed me, because it took over half his health the first time. But maybe it's just because Chansey's really bulky. Either way, he gets the Toxic on my Lady Punch, which is completely fine. Lady Punch is able to take some hits, and she does some high damage, so I'm not really worried about a Toxic from her. Fortunately for me, I forgot that it had Protect. So I used another return, and it ended up not working in my favor. But that's okay, because now I can get a nice, wholesome return. Unless it switches into Steel-type Arceus. But he goes back into Giratina, which is perfect for me, because it already had less health from not using Rest last time. So now I get a nice, after he exerts pressure, now I get a really nice return in. So even though it's really bulky, this thing just cannot take any more hits, especially from Lady Punch. So I just go for a high jump kick to get the most out of stab, even though I realized it could have missed, but I just could not stand that thing getting another rest off and having another stall fest. So even though my Lady Punch is taking some really good damage from this Toxic, he should have sent in this Chansey to get another Protect in to Toxic stall me more, but fortunately he sends out his Embor. So he withdraws his Embor, trying to bait out a return from me, which works because I used another return, and I end up hitting a Steel-type Arceus, which isn't effective. So that was really smart strategy on him, on his behalf, should I say. So I get hurt even more by the Toxic. At this point, I pretty much just try to destroy his Steel-type Arceus with a high jump kick, but again, it misses because 90% chance is just that low. Really, really, thank you, Pokemon. I appreciate that. But anyway, he uses a Thunderbolt. If that high jump kick would have hit him, he would have had some hard time dealing with it. For him, I go into my Underpunch, and I'm going to go for a Drain Punch here, because I predicted that he was either A, going to switch out or not do enough damage. So I get a nice Drain Punch on this Embor, and Drain Punch mixed with Iron Fist, mixed with a Stab, just gets the job done, just like I wanted it to. So my Underpunch is just making moves here, gets a really nice Drain Punch off, and I'm loving it. Since I have Life Orb, I lose some HP, but that's completely okay. He has Chansey. I'm not really worried about Chansey because my Underpunch is not the fastest thing, but it can outspeed Chansey, so I'm not too worried about Chansey. I get rid of Chansey with another Drain Punch. And now I'm left to fight Steel-type Arceus. So after a really wholesome battle that just went back and forth, I finally found the way through the upper hand. And now one of my favorite Pokemon, which is Hitmonchan. Just in case he decides to do Judgment or something, I went for a Mach Punch to get the most out of the damage, and then I plan to send Toph in, you know, so she can get a Choice Scarf Earthquake. But fortunately for me, the Thunderbolt didn't do too much damage, so I get the last Mach Punch, and with that, I'm able to knock my opponent out. And with an end to a very great match, I lose some life due to Life Orb, and that is the match. Thank you everyone for watching, and have a good one.